Hello everyone and welcome back to the 5th season of Dungeons & Death Battles as we continue on our journey to find the most lethal monster in all of Dungeons & Dragons. In this season, as with those that have come before it, 16 deadly dungeon denizens will be facing off against each other until we find the most barbaric of the bunch. This, of course, being the CR5 season. The rules of the arena are simple. Combatants start 30 feet apart. There is no fleeing the arena, no outside influence is allowed, and victory is achieved by kill only. Due to some very specific shenanigans last season, the kobold mob that runs the arena have seen it fit to install a 150-foot high ceiling, and have ruled that any creature leaving the arena via any means of teleportation, astral trickery, or the like must return to the material plane within one turn or be disqualified, and likely consumed by the arena arbiters. We don't know exactly what they are, but they sound absolutely terrifying, so best obey the rules. And I would like to welcome you back to the very first match of the CR5 quarterfinals. And as most of you will be well aware, 16 deadly denizens have battled it out to this point, unto which only 8 remain. These monsters, of course, going toe-to-toe against one another to see which of them can rise up into the semi-final rounds, get a step closer to that coveted CR5 crown. But before we get there, we do, of course, have some quarter-final battles to take place. And in today's grisly clash, 2 horrors stitched, rotted, and raised from the nightmares of necromancers and artificers alike, step into our humble yet blood-soaked arena. In today's blue corner, we have the Flesh Golem, a hulking construct of sewn sinew and stolen limbs, powered by pure lightning and questionable ethics. This lumbering brute's only goal is, of course, to smash, crush, and tear its way into the semi-finals, one unfortunate opponent at a time. However, that is not going to be any easy feat, as today, facing it from the red corner, drifting ominously and leaking ichor, is none other than the Beholder Zombie. Once a tyrannical aberration with a godlike ego, now a floating corpse whose eyes twitch with necrotic hunger. It may have lost its mind, but it has certainly not lost its bite, nor has it lost the ability to shower its foes with terrifying eye rays, which of course it will be attempting to do in tonight's battle. Now behind the scenes, our kobold technicians are struggling to keep the arena lights from flickering. Apparently the very process of keeping the Flesh Golem alive is short-circuiting the grid here in the arena tonight, but I'm sure they will overcome it, the technological masters that they are. Meanwhile, the Beholder Zombie has spent most of pre-match inspection attempting to eat one of the kobold interns, and of course we wish him a swift recovery. And anyway, all that aside, while these issues are being resolved, that does give us time to jump into a combatant analysis. And now, of course, these creatures will be familiar at this point, as the Flesh Golem strides into the arena with a hit point average of 127 and an AC of just 9. That being said, this creature has still proven itself a worthy adversary in the arena, with immunities to lightning and poison damage, as well as the charmed, exhaustion, frightened, paralyzed, petrified, and poisoned conditions. On the flip side of this, the Golem does have aversion to fire, although its defenses certainly outweigh this vulnerability, as its immutable form means it cannot be shapeshifted. Its lightning absorption means that whenever it takes lightning damage, it regains a number of hit points equal to the lightning damage dealt, and that magic resistance, a very, very potent ability that of course grants the Golem advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. And of course we cannot forget the Golem's attacks, of which it has multi, and can use its multi-attack to make 2 slam attacks, each slam hitting on a 7-up with a reach of 5 feet and dealing 2d8 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage plus 1d8 points of lightning damage on a successful strike. The Flesh Golem, of course, well known as well for its strength and constitution, with 19 and 18 respectively, although it is let down, as we well know, in the mental statistics, with rather low intellect and charisma scores being one of the downsides to this monster, although all round it does make for a terrifying foe. But of course we know what awaits us in the red corner today, and that is none other than the Beholder Zombie. The rotted aberration, now turned undead, finds itself poised and ready to aim for victory in tonight's battle, as it floats into the arena ominously with a hit point average of 93 and a much higher AC of 15. The Beholder Zombie also has some immunities, with complete immunity to poison damage, as well as the exhaustion, poisoned, and prone conditions. As we well know, the Beholder Zombie can blast forth with 4 different terrifying eye rays, with paralyzing, fear, Enervation and Disintegration all being options that can be brought to bear. The Beholder Zombie firing off 2 of these randomly each battle round. And of course, the creature does have access to its very own bite attack, which will be dealing 4d6 plus 2 points of piercing damage to any creature fool enough to get near that ragged mouth. And as if the Beholder Zombie wasn't difficult enough to kill, it has the Undead Fortitude trait, of course meaning that if damage reduces the zombie to 0 hit points, it makes a Constitution saving throw, which is DC 5 plus the damage taken, with the exception being if that damage is radiant or from a critical hit. On a successful save, the zombie drops to 1 hit point instead and remains active. So of course we have met both of these combatants before, each one with its own separate fanbase, its own abilities, and its own desire for victory. And with all that in mind, it does look like both arena teams are ready. And again, from up here in my booth, I can see the signal from the Kobold mob down below, indicating that it is indeed time to kick-start the CR5 quarterfinals. Flesh Golem versus Beholder Zombie, as we roll in for initiative, with both of these creatures rolling in with a -1 modifier, but of course starting off with the Flesh Golem. And so rolling in right here, a -1 to this modifier, and that is going to be a 10 -1 to make for 9, which does seem apt as it matches its initiative score. And that does mean that the Beholder Zombie will now be needing to roll in with an 11 or higher, as it does also share that -1 modifier. The Beholder Zombie rolling in, looking to beat that 9 total. But with a 7 -1 for 6, that does mean that the Flesh Golem will be kicking things off in tonight's battle. And the Cranky Construct is going to initiate here and charges across the battlefield towards the position of the Beholder Zombie, which does of course seem to be hovering ponderously in place. And while the Flesh Golem isn't the most intelligent creature in the world, it is going to look at the creature that is floating midair in front of it, and it's going to realize that this is not what it wants at all. Even with its rather low intelligence, it can understand that this creature in front of it looks as if it's about to float away. And of course the best way to keep something floating close to you is to grab onto it tight. And so the Flesh Golem is going to initiate a grapple against the Beholder Zombie, which will be forcing the Beholder Zombie to make a DC 15 strength or dexterity saving throw. A failure, of course, imposing the grappled condition upon it. The DC 15, of course, coming from the Flesh Golem's proficiency bonus plus its strength modifier, which are 3 and 4 respectively, which then get added to a stock DC of 8, which brings that all the way up to 15. And so the Beholder Zombie rolling in right here to see if it can avoid that grappled condition. And that is a 6 plus 2 for 8, which does mean that the Beholder Zombie has been grabbed by the Flesh Golem. One of those mechanized hands reaching forward with speed and grabbing onto one of those writhing eye stalks, securing the Beholder Zombie where it floats. But that will bring a swift end to the Flesh Golem's turn, as we do hand over the Beholder Zombie. And as the creature attempts to rise into the air, it finds that its progress has been stymied, as while the Flesh Golem is indeed a size smaller than the Beholder Zombie, it is an incredibly dense creature, weighing in at roughly 230 kilograms or 500 pounds. The Flesh Golem is anything but easily movable, especially for something with weak rotted flesh. And with that in mind, the Beholder Zombie is going to instinctively turn to what it does best, and that of course is firing with its eye rays. Its intellect of 3 giving it no other options, as what remains of its nervous system simply kicks into gear, firing off 2 eye rays. So it's time to roll in to see which comes through first. Of course, we will be rolling a d4. And that right there rolls in with a 3, which is the Enervation Ray, which does mean that the Flesh Golem must now make a DC 14 Constitution saving throw, taking 3d6 points of necrotic damage on a failure and taking on the poisoned condition. So first things first, Flesh Golem needs to make a DC 14 Constitution saving throw right here. However, its magic resistance does mean that this will be an advantage, as the eye rays are magical in nature. So Flesh Golem rolling in DC 14 Constitution saving throw plus 4 to this modifier. But rolling in with a 9 on advantage does mean that it is a single point shy of making that a success. Does of course mean that that is a failure here, meaning that the Flesh Golem will now be taking 3d6 points of necrotic damage. Although thankfully, due to its solid stack of immunities, cannot be poisoned, and thus will be evading that condition. But it is unable to resist any of that necrotic damage, which is coming in hot. 3d6 points right here. That is 3 2s, which will total together to make for 6 points of damage. Nothing but consistency on those dice rolls there from the Beholder Zombie, which will be dropping the Flesh Golem from 127 to 121 hit points. All that as the second eye ray fires in. And that is a 2 right there, which is the Fear Ray. And so now this time the Flesh Golem will be subject to a DC 14 Wisdom saving throw. Otherwise it will be taking 3d8 points of psychic damage this time, and will have the frightened condition until the end of its next turn. So once again, another saving throw for the Flesh Golem here, although its Wisdom does not grant it any modifier, which means this will be rolling in flat. So of course still on advantage due to that magic resistance. Flesh Golem rolling in, but a 19 with no modifier, of course totaling for 19 will be a success this time around, which does mean that the effects of that Fear Ray are simply nullified, as a success does mean that nothing happens. There is no half damage or anything of the like for this attack, which does mean that we will hand over to the Flesh Golem, which does have the Beholder Zombie firmly in its grasp, and it will of course be making 2 slam attacks. One hand of course holding on to the Beholder Zombie, but it does have the other one free, and by the looks of it, it is going to be dealing a mighty fine headbutt to its opponent as well. So Flesh Golem rolling in to beat the Beholder Zombie's AC of 15. First strike rolling in, plus 7 to this. And with a 9 plus 7 for 16, that first attack is going to make it through the Beholder's defenses, and will therefore be dealing 2d8 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage, plus 1d8 points of lightning damage, which we will be rolling in altogether, as there are no resistances or immunities at play. We're rolling in for damage right here. Flesh Golem looking to deal as much as possible, and that is on the lower side right there, with the 3 and the 2 for 5, plus 4 for 9, although that will be topped up by the 4-point modifier to make for 13 points of damage from that first slam, which will be dropping the Beholder Zombie from 93 to 80 hit points as the Flesh Golem unleashes its might. But we will of course be rolling in yet again, as the Flesh Golem does have another slam attack to use, this time its head coming down with some serious force, as it rolls in with a 13 plus 7 to make for 20, which will once again be shattering the Beholder Zombie's hide, splitting the corpulent flesh and dealing yet more damage. And that damage of course being another 3d8 plus 4 points of damage total. So rolling in, and that is a stronger hit there by the looks of things, with a 5 and a 1 for 6, plus that 7 right there to make for 13 points of damage, which will be topped up by that 4-point modifier to make for 17 points of damage total, which will further be dropping the Beholder Zombie down to 63 hit points. These two unnatural amalgamations just going at each other right here in the arena tonight. A blood-curdling spectacle between two creatures that, by the laws of nature, really should not be here tonight. However, they are, and they are battling it out for our viewing pleasure. So long may the brawl continue. And with that, of course, we will be handing back over to the Beholder Zombie. The large undead, its instinct kicking in once again. It attempts to fly upwards to no avail. The Flesh Golem simply holds it down, the creature's mass being simply too much to drag skyward, and the Beholder Zombie's intelligence of 3 just completely hampering any critical thought that it may have possessed in its past life. But that, of course, brings it to one option and one option only, and that is for its muscle memory to kick in, unleashing yet more eye rays. And so we'll roll in yet again to see which one it can pull through with first. And that yet again is a 3, which is the Innovation Ray. And that will once again be forcing a DC 14 Constitution saving throw from the Flesh Golem. On advantage, of course, due to that magic resistance. And rolling in with a 17 there, with that 4-point modifier to make for 21. Does mean that the Flesh Golem has succeeded. Although Innovation Ray, unlike Fear Ray, will still be inflicting half damage on that success. And so we'll be rolling in with 3d6 here. Of course, having this damage rounded down. And that is a shame, because that is some decent damage right there from the Beholder Zombie, with a 3 and a 4 for 7, plus that 5, which bring that all the way up to 12 points of damage. Of course, only getting halved down to 6, which will be dropping the Flesh Golem down to 115 points, as the Beholder Zombie fires in with yet a second eye ray. And that is a 4, which is none other than Disintegration Ray. The full might of the Beholder Zombie brought to bear against the Flesh Golem here, as it charges up the most destructive of its eye rays, as it looks to turn the Flesh Golem into nothing more than a fine powder. Now once again, the Flesh Golem must make a saving throw to avoid this damage, although this time it is a dexterity saving throw, which will force the Flesh Golem to roll in, of course, with its dexterity, with a -1 modifier, although the only saving grace for the construct is, of course, that this is still at advantage. So rolling in, let's see what it could do here. Looking to beat that DC of 14 to avoid 5d10 points of force damage. And the Flesh Golem's resilience shines through as it rolls in with a natural 20. It could not have asked for any better right here, as its unnatural hide simply absorbs the vast bulk of that damage as it dissipates through whatever bizarre consortium of creatures the Flesh Golem has been constructed from. Perhaps the Flesh Golem's recipe includes a creature with resistance to force damage, but all that said, the Flesh Golem has resisted the vast majority of the damage, although it will still be taking half of 5d10 points of force damage, which we will be rolling in right here, and that would have been a mighty hit indeed, with 2 9s for 18, plus 6 and 5 for 29, topped up by that floating 3 for 32 points of damage total, although of course due to that Flesh Golem's miraculous save, that damage will be halved down to 16, which will be reducing the Flesh Golem from 115 below the 100 mark to 99 hit points, as the Beholder Zombie clearly forces a warning to all: do not stand in front of that disintegration ray. Although with that we will be handing over once again to the Flesh Golem, which I would imagine feels singed and sore at this point, but is of course going to absolutely carry on with its campaign of death, it maintaining that grapple, as the Beholder Zombie seems reluctant to attempt to break it in favor of dealing damage with the eye rays, although that does mean that the Flesh Golem will be able to swing in with yet 2 more slam attacks. So rolling in for that first one here, again plus 7, looking to be an AC of 15, and another big roll from the Flesh Golem there with 19 plus 7 for 26. What an absolutely colossal strike there from the construct, breaking through the Beholder Zombie's defenses with ease, as it now gets to roll in with 2d8 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage and 1d8 points of lightning damage, although as we have established, as there are no resistances or immunities at play, we can roll these all in at once. Although that is some really pitiful output there from the Flesh Golem, with 2 1s for 2 plus 3 for 5, topped up by its plus 4 modifier to make for a meager 9 points of damage. We'll be dropping the Zombie Beholder from 63 to 54 hit points, although the Flesh Golem will be able to swing in again. It clearly only scraped the side of the Beholder that turn, its fist merely grazing past one of the eye stalks, inflicting very little damage, but it will be getting an attempt to do that once again, and it rolls in with a 10 plus 7 for 17, which is also more than enough to make a strike connect, as it rolls in once again with those 3d8 plus that 4-point modifier. And that is a little bit better right there, with 2 4s for 8, topped up by that 7 to make for 15 points of damage, topped up by the plus 4 modifier to make for a much more respectable 19 total, which will be further reducing the Beholder Zombie to just 35 hit points, as the Flesh Golem continues to inflict wound after wound on its undead opponent, the crushing grip of the Flesh Golem clearly unrelenting to the point where the Beholder Zombie is unable to escape, its simple mind not even really granting it the option to attempt to do so either, in favor of blasting away and attempting to let off the disintegration ray once again. The Beholder Zombie likely has no idea that its time is numbered. In fact, it probably doesn't even know that it is actually still alive, and is purely operating on a basal instinct instilled into it by some kind of dark necrotic magic that this announcer in no way, shape or form has any true understanding of. Now, that being said, we do hand over to the Beholder Zombie, which once again looks to be firing up with those eye rays, as it rolls in once again to see which ones it's going to unleash this time. And with a 2, we once again have the Fear Ray, of course a DC 14 Wisdom saving throw to avoid 3d8 points of psychic damage. Rolling in for the Flesh Golem once again, no modifier to this, and that is an absolutely terrible roll right there from the Flesh Golem, with a 4 plus 0, of course brings it to a total of 4, meaning that the Fear Ray this time has wormed its way into whatever inner workings the Flesh Golem has remaining in its brainstem, that cortex being absolutely pummeled by psychic damage. Although as we've established, the Flesh Golem seems to be immune to pretty much everything, to pretty much every condition, and thus will be avoiding that frightened condition, but it will be taking the full brunt of 3d8 points of psychic damage. A little taste of its own medicine perhaps, as those d8s come down hard upon it. They're rolling in. Let's see what kind of damage output the Beholder Zombie can bring. And in a twist of fate right here, the Beholder Zombie seems to know what it's doing more with those d8s than the Flesh Golem itself, with 2 7s for 14, topped up by that 5 for 19 points of damage, which will match the Flesh Golem's previous output. The Beholder Zombie bringing its opponent down from 99 to 80 hit points, as its Fear Ray does not have a modifier. We'll be dealing 19 points of damage flat. A very, very sturdy hit indeed, especially considering the creature has yet another eye ray to bring to bear. That they're showcasing the exact reason as well that it seems to be avoiding using its bite attack. These eye rays, when they go off, are just so much more powerful, and that is likely ingrained into the beholder at a molecular level. Let's see which eye ray is brought up next. And that once again is that 4, which does mean that the beholder zombie has the chance to fire off with a disintegration ray. Yet again, the most powerful of its eye rays brought down upon the Flesh Golem right here. Can the creature resist it yet again and prove that it really has got the makeup of something that resists that force damage? Let's find out as we once again roll in with that dexterity saving throw on advantage, but with a -1 modifier. The Flesh Golem rolling in to see if it can avoid 5d10 points of force damage, and an 18 -1 for 17 does mean that it passes the bar right here, and the Flesh Golem does once again stave off the bulk of that disintegration ray, although as before it will still be taking half of 5d10 points of force damage, which could still be a very impactful blow indeed. So rolling in right here for the beholder zombie and its damage output, and it is a decent roll yet again, with 10 plus 7 for 17, plus that 8 for 25. Of course, that 1 bringing it up to 26, and that 6 bringing it all the way back up to, yet again, another 32 points of damage that the Flesh Golem has reduced down to just 16. Another very, very fortunate roll from the blue corner today, as it sees itself dropped from 80 to 64 hit points, as the beholder zombie simply keeps chipping away at the Flesh Golem's life force. Electricity can be heard crackling as it resists that damage, as the unnatural construct does mitigate most of it, although still taking a hefty strike. But with all that said, the Ducat seems to be well and truly on, and these two creatures have established a back and forth, which does mean we hand over to the Flesh Golem once again, which it maintains that grapple on the beholder zombie, and will be making yet again 2 more slam attacks, one with its offhand and the other of course with its fortified face. So rolling in for that first one, plus 7 to hit versus AC 15. And a 13 plus 7 for 20 is a strike yet again, as the carnage continues with yet another 3d8 plus 4 points of damage, with 2 3s for 6, plus that 5 for 11 with that 4-point modifier, bringing that all the way up to 15 points of damage, dropping the beholder zombie from 35 to 20 hit points. And of course, the Flesh Golem does have another attack to strike down with. Is this going to be the one that brings the beholder zombie down? Let's find out. Oh, it doesn't look like it's going to be, as the Flesh Golem fumbles its second slam attack, rolling in with a 4 plus 7 for 11 does mean that the Flesh Golem has missed that second attack. And to keep things moving, we do hand over immediately to the beholder zombie, which once again will be rolling in to see which eye rays it can bring down upon its foe, with a 1 this time, landing on that paralyzing ray, which we will roll off against again a DC 14 Constitution saving throw at advantage from the Flesh Golem, and with an 11 plus 4 for 15, that is going to be a success. Although in future, this seems to be an eye ray that we can completely ignore this battle, as of course the Flesh Golem is immune to the paralyzed condition amongst the myriad other immunities it has. So we will roll in once again with the beholder zombie and its eye rays, and once again we have a 4. The zombie beholder looking to bring the disintegration rate down upon the Flesh Golem. It really looks like it wants to get a full damage round off against its opponent, and absolutely, why wouldn't it, as it forces the Flesh Golem once again to make that DC 14 dexterity saving throw with a -1 modifier, all while still being at advantage. And it's done it again! Who could have called it? The Flesh Golem really looks to be packing hard against the beholder zombie. It does not want to take any of that force damage. It has absolutely been created with the skin or the flesh, the body parts of something that has resistance to force damage. That has to be a component of the Flesh Golem. Thus, with it rolling in with 2 natural 20s in order to resist the damage from that disintegration ray. Try as it might, the beholder zombie is simply unable to make a full body blow against that Flesh Golem, and its magic is simply not going to be strong enough to penetrate the Flesh Golem and its ridiculously resistant hide. Although it will of course be taking half of 5d10 points of force damage as we roll in yet again, with what looks to be a very average roll indeed, with an 8 plus 1 for 9, plus 3 and a 2 for 14, and topped up by a 7 for 21 points of damage, which will of course be halved and rounded down to a mere 10, which will drop the Flesh Golem down to 54 hit points, which does mean that it has just been pushed below its bloodied threshold, which under the usual circumstances would mean that it acquires the Berserk trait, which would mean it needs to roll in with 1d6 on its turn. On a 6, the golem would of course go berserk, and while berserk it would attack the nearest creature it could see, which in this situation is the Beholder Zombie, and the Beholder Zombie alone does mean that we can avoid doing this, and we can just say that the Flesh Golem, having taken all of that damage to the face, is of course going to be angry with the Beholder Zombie and is going to unleash its full potential against its foe regardless. And that of course means that we hand over once again to the Flesh Golem, which is going to weigh in with those hammer fists to see if it can put the Beholder Zombie down once and for all. First attack coming through at +7 to this, and with a 19 again, the Flesh Golem rolling high into this second half of combat at +7, bringing that all the way up to 26 as it throws in with yet again 3d8 +4 points of damage total, with an 8 and a 1 for 9 +4, bringing that all the way up to 13 with that 4-point modifier, bringing that up to 17 total, which will bring the Beholder Zombie down to a mere 3 hit points as the Flesh Golem prepares to throw in with that second attack. The slam, this time once again coming from that iron hard forehead, and a 17 +7 for 24 does mean that that connects well as the monster yet again inflicts another d8 heavy load of damage upon the Beholder Zombie. And with a very, very high roll indeed for that blow, with 6 +8 for 14, +7 for 21, with that +4 modifier, bringing that all the way up to 25 points of damage, which will, of course, bring the Beholder Zombie down to 0 hit points. Although, we scratch our heads, as I quickly work out if this is possible or not, as the Beholder Zombie's undead fortitude looks to be taking hold, the creature struggling to maintain that source of unlife that it has been clinging to so far. Although the DC to resist being dropped to 0 hit points is reliant on the amount of damage that has just been dealt to it. The DC, of course, being 5 plus the amount of damage taken, with a huge roll of 25, will make the Constitution DC a 30, which is completely impossible for the Beholder Zombie to roll in. Even if it managed to roll in with a natural 20, its 3-point Constitution modifier would only bring it up to a 23, which does mean that the Flesh Golem connects its head, absolutely carving through the forehead of the Beholder Zombie, as this time the Flesh Golem is met with very, very little resistance. Undead monster in front of it simply disintegrating itself, its skull turning into a morbid mush as the Flesh Golem drops its opponent to the ground, securing the very first win here in the quarter-final round of the CR5 League. A gruesome display from two incredibly unnatural combatants, although the Flesh Golem proving superiority here in the arena once again. The Beholder Zombie dropped and crushed into a pile of slowly rotting goo as it mingles with the sand of the arena, of course being dropped to 0 hit points from that incredibly high damage strike. And that series of attacks, of course, seeing the Flesh Golem rise through, being the very first of our combatants to make it into the semi-final round. And with all that said, I hope you enjoyed tonight's combat, in which the Flesh Golem put an end to the Beholder Zombie's career. And if you did enjoy what you saw, please consider dropping a like on the video, commenting down below, subscribing to the channel, and engaging with YouTube's new hype feature, as it is all very much appreciated. And will all, of course, drive these arena battles to more viewers, and that is what we want for a more lively arena. And with that, I hope you will join me again next time, when the vigour takes on the Brontosaurus in one of the most titanic battles we will have seen to date in the arena. Two incredibly hard-hitting brawlers going toe-to-toe for yet again another spot in the semi-final round. And once again, I would like to remind you all that the Patreon does exist, and it will be active once again at some point in the near future, as the CR6 League does seem to be creeping up on the horizon. Patreon, of course, free for all, only really used to facilitate the larger polls that we need to do here in order to select combatants for leagues. But with all that said, thank you once again very, very much for watching, and I will see you in another quarter-final bout very soon.